So, I hope this is recording. Hi guys again. This is my response to the NATO burden sharing question that has been posted. It's not actually a response to the question because the question was what kind of policies or initiatives could solve or mitigate NATO's burden sharing problem. So I'm not providing necessarily a solution as much as pointing out that and by I mean a lot of the people I've read, the authors I've read, tend to instead think that the problem is being looked from the wrong perspective. So there's there is a solution per se, but it's not that direct. But let's get right to it. So first and foremost, this issue brings up a lot of conflicts within me. Personally, I am a strong supporter of the fact that the US, being a hegemon, profoundly benefits from the existence of NATO, profoundly benefits, enjoys a lot of geopolitical benefits from the existence of NATO, as we uncovered in your lecture, Professor. So, as hegemons do, it should share a higher burden of the cost, because it is one of the primary benefactors from this alliance. It's a product of its hegemony, and it's a reflection of its hegemony. At the same time, there is a big problem because not only are NATO members spending below their threshold, so not only are they not kind of pulling their weight from an expenditure point of view, but their military capabilities are not even close to being up to par. So that then becomes a very legitimate concern for the US, because it's not just an issue of who's paying more for it, it's an issue of there's a geopolitical there's a threat to the American geopolitical interest because European countries are not pulling their weight. So what is this threshold? So the threshold that was decided tragically, it was conceived roughly in 2006, so before the 2008 financial crisis, which kind of changed a lot of perceptions, but the threshold was officially adopted in 2014. At the NATO summit in Wales, and they set a 2% threshold on NATO members, 2% of GDP. So NATO members have to spend 2% of their respective GDPs on defense by 2024. And of their defense spending, if I'm correct, 20% of that defense spending should be on innovation, on R&D, on keeping equipment up to date, pretty much. So, problem with that, and what I kind of found by doing a bit of research, is that a lot of analysts point to the fact that this is a stupid number. It's kind of an arbitrary number, in that it really doesn't tackle, this entire debate really fails to tackle the fundamental issue that is plaguing NATO forces. So, for example, these are estimates based on a CSIS, super duper big American think tank. It's kind of estimated based on US intelligence that Russian military NATO's military spending was roughly 15.5 times the spending by Russia. And even if we subtract the United States, or actually even if we only consider the European members of NATO, then that expenditure amount would still be 4 times as much as the Russian, even if we include Belarus, whatever, without complicating the issue. But still, in most, or in a lot of NATO strategic simulations, pretty much, the organization keeps finding itself to be woefully, not woefully, but to be underprepared to respond to a potential military threat. Also because, as I'm going to touch in a minute, military threats are becoming a lot more complex. Threats in general to NATO geopolitical interest and security are becoming a lot more complex. But the problem is that it is not, the real problem is not whether countries are spending 2% of their GDP, it's that they're spending it very poorly, the very little part of their spending. Is that the real issue is that countries should be spending better to improve their military capabilities and response times. That is the crux of the problem, not necessarily, again, the reaching of an arbitrary number. It's not a money issue, it's a spending issue kind of problem. It's a coordination issue. There's also a problem related to the fact that NATO kind of needs to modernize its defense strategy because new threats are emerging. For example, it needs to kind of start to to invest in ways to defend itself against cybersecurity threats, against asymmetrical political warfare threats. It needs to examine its nuclear deterrence options and sorry, my throat is closing up. And policies. So overall, my main finding has been that the 2% debate is kind of dumb. Nations shouldn't really be evaluated by how much they are spending, as much as how much they contribute to NATO's common defense policy, to NATO's common defense strategy, sorry. So by their readiness and military capabilities, and not by the 2% goal. So that is what I've been able to do on this issue. And that is an email I've just received, but this is my response.